Now, the story of Caroline Cossey, also known as Tula, is an extraordinary but successful transition from being a man to becoming a glamorous female model. A year ago today, Caroline got married, but she soon separated from her husband. The marriage was later annulled because the government does not recognize the right of transsexuals to marry. She feels strongly that the law discriminates against transsexuals and is now pressing the European Court of Human Rights for changes. So let's just go over exactly, Tula, what you're fighting for in this case.
I'm just trying to fight to get my documents in order, basically. All I have is a passport. Other than that, there's nothing. So I have no legal rights as a female. If I commit a crime, I could end up in a man's prison. I can't be raped. I can't marry male or female. I have no rights either way.
So therefore, though your passport, confirms that you are a woman, nevertheless your birth certificate still gives your original name as a man and the details.
Yes.
So what are the rest of the repercussions of that? You've mentioned a few, but why do you feel just so strongly about your birth certificate being changed?
Well, I've been a victim twice. I was exposed at the peak of my career as a model by the News of the World, and then last year I was married and I was dumped and I didn't have a legal leg to stand on. And we become victims. I mean, I get so many letters from transsexuals from all over the country saying, you know, I've got a job and my employee doesn't know, or I'm going out with so-and-so, and I'm paranoid, you know, because I don't have my papers in order, so I feel totally motivated because I've got nothing to lose. I've been exposed by the press, so, you know, I just sort of feel I'm fighting for the 25,000.
Actually, you brought up the subject there of being dumped after your marriage. Exactly what happened in that case?
Well, we came back from our honeymoon, and on the day that we came back, it was front page in News of the World, and my husband, you know, we expected it to happen maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, but not sort of when it did. He said, look, come and speak to my family. You're better at putting over your predicament than I am. And I just sort of felt a bit paranoid to face his family. His mother was a little bit difficult, and he went alone, and I never saw him again. I had to deal with his brother, William, and lawyers, basically. And sadly, you know, when it got to the court battle for a decent settlement, I wanted to sort it all out with him, but he wouldn't face me. He was hiding in court somewhere.
So presumably you had told your husband-to-be at that stage, about the fact that you were a man previously.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, I had hinted from day one. I mean, I don't have periods and things, and I said I can't have children. And he said, what's the problem? And I said, well, I had to have medical treatment sort of early on, and to make me complete, and I hoped he would guess, but he was very diplomatic. He never sort of came out with it straight away. But when he actually asked me to marry him, I felt he needs to know, and I gave him my book to read. I wrote a book, Tula, I Am a Woman, and 2 days after he asked me to marry him, I gave him the book to read, and he accepted it so intelligently. I mean, I think he loved me as a person. So
but you made a clear-cut decision not to tell family, or?
Well, we just sort of felt his father was in his 90s, his mother was in her 70s, and she was very conservative. They hadn't wanted to meet me for 3 months because I was Christian. So, you know, it was heavy going. So I converted, and then they wanted to meet me. And,
well, you can understand it from their point of view, though, can't you? To
what,
a point.
being Christian?
No. I mean, just how they reacted to the predicament.
Well, I can't actually, because we were very much in love, and they could see that. But to sort of summon him home and say, you know, you've got no life with this person, and get rid of her, and being dumped, and I've been treated very badly by them.
Let me just bring it back, not exactly to the beginning, but to the time when you were at school. I mean, at what point did you realize that you were different?
I think from sort of 7 or 8, I was dressing as a girl and playing girly games and things, and I didn't sort of fit in. I mean, I didn't like football and rugby and all the usual things that boys play at school. I
think, in fact, we have a photograph from your book. Yes, here it is, of you as a boy, as Barry. So were you, you know, ridiculed a bit at school because you're a bit feminine?
I was Sissy Cossey and Pansy and all the mummy's boy and all that sort of thing. And I was very confused, and then sort of got to 13, having sex lessons at school. I sort of thought, oh my God, I don't like girls at all, and I was very confused because I like boys, and I didn't want to be an embarrassment to my family. So the minute I was old enough and left school at 16, I wanted to head for London so I could grow my hair and dress as a girl.
So was it at that stage then you started to live your life as a woman at around 17?
Yes.
And at what point then did you confess to your family, to your own family?
Well, my brother Terry came up to see me, and I sort of spoke to Terry, and I said, oh, it's going to be difficult. How can I break it to Mum and Dad? And he said, I'll speak to them. And he did. And then I went home and faced my Mum and Dad, and my childhood fitted together like a jigsaw, really. All the little problems that I had, and my uncles and aunts always said, you know, something wrong with him. You've got to watch him, he's going to grow up a bit funny and things like that. And they were wonderful. They were behind me. I mean, my dad was even willing to pay for my surgery, but I wanted to pay for it myself.
And clearly, just moving it on, I mean, past the operation, you then became a very successful model. But were you always hiding the fact of your previous life? Were you hoping that nobody would find out about that in the outside world?
Of course, because it was a very personal and private situation that I got over many years ago. But News of the World hounded me for 4 years, and then obviously had enough information, and the tactics that they went to get the information was quite horrendous, and they were able to print the story finally. But it's not the sort of thing I feel like bragging about, and certainly not walk around on my forehead, I'm a transsexual, so no.
Who do you think has found it most difficult to cope with? I mean, do men, when they find out that you were previously a man, do they find it hard to deal with?
I don't ask them, actually.
I just wonder if you know, an attitude, you know, whether it's in shops. I mean, after the exposure in the newspaper, did attitudes, say, in your local shops change?
Well, yes, people sort of have 2 left feet and things, but I have 2 left feet at times as well, so I understood that. But no, people are, I mean, now it's the 90s, and I think people are changing their ideas and things, and I'm not a criminal. I was born this way, and I'm just trying to make the most of it. God made me like this.
Do you think that by becoming a model, and I know that you're going to do some Playboy work as well, are you in a way trying to prove your femininity?
No. I'm just trying to enlighten people that we're not transvestites, we're transsexuals, and we're born as women. We have psychologically one sex and physically another. And people have the wrong idea about transsexuals. So I think if I do Playboy and the money is okay, and Hugh Hefner wants to do the story as it happens, then I'm happy to do that.
So you're going back to the European courts. What do you predict, or what do you feel is going to happen?
I'm going to win, definitely. I'm definitely going to win. They were cornered on so many points. I've got a petition up my sleeve in case I lose, so I can go down and fight Maggie, but I know I'm going to win.
Well, on that note, we'll leave it. So, Julia, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. Now, if the menace of drugs in society is to be effectively controlled, preventing drug abuse in schools must surely be one of the top priorities. Many schools already run campaigns to educate children about the dangers of drugs, but is this enough? In the United States, a more rigorous approach is found in many states where the authorities have powers to undertake random drug testing in the classroom itself. Is such a tough approach needed here as well? Well, MP Ray Powell believes it is, and tomorrow we'll introduce a bill in the Commons to allow similar tests in our schools. And I'm also joined by Rob Gifford from the National Union of Teachers to give the view of those who would have to administer the scheme itself. So, Mr. Powell, just looking at the issue here, I mean, do you believe that the problem is really big enough within our schools that it warrants testing within the classroom?
Oh yes, it's escalated. There's no doubt about that. And all the experts who've studied this over the years have said it's high time the government, educationalists, the police, and everyone involved should now start taking action to reduce drug and have random drug testing, so we can determine not only the extent of the problem, but how to remedy it.
But how would it work in practice? I mean, it has been used widely in the States, as I've already said. On a day-to-day basis, how does that work?
Well, I am suggesting, of course, that the usual random drug test would be recommended, A, by the school teachers, school governors, school headmasters, so that the NUT and others would be involved. The children would have their parents' consent if they're under 16, but there would be no need of that if they're over 16. And random drug testing would then take place as a result of the recommendation of the authorities themselves. Now, it's the authorities themselves that wants to try and remedy the problem, just as much as other people, just as much as those who studied the problem campaigned for 3 years. And when we see this problem escalating, it's the children that I am concerned about, the children who have been caught, as Princess of Wales said in the middle of last month at one of the conferences against child abuse and drug abuse in schools. She said it's time we caught the children in the classroom before the drug peddlers caught them at the school gates. Now that's what I want to introduce, is a bill to allow random drug testing. I'm sure, Gloria, it's going to come about. It's got to come about because we've got to stop this menace. We've already got it in sport in this country and international sports. All the competitors have got to be drug tested. No, we've already got that. Why not for school children?
Let me just see now how Rob reacts to that. Drug testing within the classroom, Rob. Do you think it would work?
Well, I think there's a lot of common ground at the point that Ray ended on, which is the need to get the children in the classroom before the drug peddlers get them at the school gates. What I think concerned me in what he was saying was that actually the random drug testing is going to deal with them after the drug peddlers have got them. I think the stress, rather, would have to be on dealing with the causes, rather, than dealing with the symptoms, which is what random drug testing is. And certainly a concern that I think we'd all have is how on earth it would actually operate within the classroom itself.
Yes, how would it? I mean, are the teachers going to do it, or who's going to do it?
Well, no, medical officers will do it. The simple way is a urine test. The cost of the urine test is approximately £12. And the experts say that this is the type of test that should be used, and it will detect most drugs. The prominent drug that's being used by young, very young school children is crack, American drug called crack. And this is freely available, and it's going into rural areas,
Would
not
that
only
show
in
up,
cities.
though, on tests? I mean, if young people had been dabbling with whatever drug, would it actually show up in tests?
Well, I've absolutely no idea from that point of view. What I think we need to move towards, though, is if we're going to invest money in this, we would need to put money towards training teachers to spot the signs of drug abuse. And we'd obviously also need to put money into funding films, funding audiovisual material, funding tapes and interviews with people who've been affected by drug to actually stop children going down that path in the first place.
So you prefer money being spent continuing on the education level, on the prevention, rather than this actual testing?
That's right.
I mean, how do you think parents would react to children being tested on a daily basis?
That's another question, isn't it? I mean, there's a whole host of, I guess, civil liberty issues there that many parents might be deeply concerned about.
Presumably you've checked that out.
Oh yeah, the public will support me. The parents will support my bill. Because they realise the problem is escalating and it could affect their children tomorrow, where it's affecting their neighbours' children today.
Taking it to its conclusion, supposing for argument's sake you do test in the classroom and you do find that young people have been dabbling, what's the next procedure?
Well, then the next procedure is to, of course, isolate these people and try to persuade them to come off drugs. And I think this can be done. That's when Rob's suggestion about getting to them and educating them would come in. The problem is now detecting how many children are on drugs, how we can tackle it when we found out that they're on drugs. But if we don't know, the children will go right through their careers and they'll find that they'll be hooked on drugs. And when they get to the colleges, they won't be able to come off these drugs.
I'm not sure that random drug testing is necessarily going to tell us how many people are actually suffering from drugs. We would agree, I think, that there's a need for education to take its part in helping to solve drug abuse. But I would still prefer and would argue that the resources go in at the beginning rather than picking the symptoms up at the end.
Rob Gifford, I've got to leave at that point. Thank you very much indeed, Ray Powell. It'll be interesting to see if your bill does go through. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much.